Welcome to our channel. I'm Jody Flake, author and composer, and here at Problem Solve Fellow Humans, we discuss ways to meld music therapy with leading psychologist methods to learn healthy life relationship skills. Our purpose is to draw authentic love into our lives, and by doing so, see all people around us through this lens of honest love, and then treat them from this loving reference. We believe it will change our world for good.
A personal mission statement is like a tree with deep roots. It's stable and it's not going anywhere, but it's also alive and continually growing. Standing like a tree with deep roots helps you survive all the storms of life that beat you up. As you've probably noticed already, life is anything but stable. Think about all the events you can't control. Your family has to move. Your mom loses her job. The country's at war, and a family member dies. While everything about you changes, a personal mission statement can be your deep-rooted tree that never moves. You can deal with change if you have an immovable trunk to hang on to. Our call to action from this episode will ask you to create your own personal mission statement. But before we line out how to build a personal mission statement, we will discuss the wonderful human power tools which all humans have in their human tool belt. All humans are born with these innate tools. All of the material we will discuss for this episode comes from Sean Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. He and his father, Stephen Covey, have spent many years researching and studying to help humans develop healthy habits. Yes, your childhood, your parents, your genes, and your environment influence you to act in certain ways, but they can't make you do anything. Self-awareness. I can stand apart from myself and observe my thoughts and actions. Conscience. I can listen to my inner voice to know right from wrong. Imagination. I can envision new possibilities. And willpower. I have the power to choose.
It's been a rough week for Sabri. Not only has she just been shunned by her jealous girlfriends because she made the volleyball team, and they didn't, but Sabri and her mom are barely on speaking terms. As she sits on the front steps with Apollo, Sabri begins thinking about the past week, and she talks to Apollo.
You know what I realized, bud? All this stuff, it's making me go crazy, huh? With friends, sports, all the good stuff. I think it's stressful, huh? I think I'm just taking it all on Mom, right? It's kind of hard. I don't know where to put my emotions.
You see what Sabri's doing? She's standing apart from herself and evaluating and measuring her actions. This process is called self-awareness. It's a tool that is native to all humans. By using self-awareness, Sabri is able to recognize that she's allowing her girlfriend's mean actions to affect her relationship with her mom. This observation is the first step to changing the way Sabri has been treating her mom. Apollo checks the grass and fence posts and sniffs around through the weeds. Although Apollo is a loyal dog, he is completely unaware of himself. He doesn't even know that he is a dog. He is incapable of standing apart from himself and saying,
You know what? Ever since Susie, my next-door dog friend, moved, I've been taking out my anger on all the skunks in the neighborhood. This is pretend. Dogs can't be self-aware like humans can.
As Sabri continues her stroll, her thoughts begin to wander. She can hardly wait for her volleyball match tomorrow. She'll show her friends she earned that spot on the volleyball team. Sports are Sabri's life, and Sabri imagines that she's going to be spiking the ball during her match, then digging deep and saving a hard hit on the line, and finally serving the winning point for her team. Sabri sees herself dazzling those at the volleyball match. then blowing kisses to all of the fans in the crowd and giving them a thumbs up. Sabri is using another one of her human tools, imagination. It is a remarkable gift. It allows us to escape our present circumstances and create new possibilities in our head. It gives us a chance to visualize our futures and dream up what we would like to become. While Sabri's imagining visions of grandeur, Apollo, well, he's relieving himself for all the world to see. Apollo's imagination is about as alive as a rock. Zilch. Apollo can't think beyond the moment. He can't envision new possibilities. Can you imagine Apollo thinking of his future and which college he's going to attend?
Someday I'm going to have my own dream doghouse with a revolving door and a large bay window.
Folks, dogs can't talk, and they don't have an imagination either. Suddenly, Sabri feels a vibration in her pocket. She gets a text from her new friend, Grace. Sabri is bothered by Grace's reference to her problem with her girlfriends. It's none of Grace's business, since Sabri hardly knows her. Although she's tempted to be curt, she knows Grace is just trying to get to know her better and really doesn't mean any harm. Sabri feels that being warm and friendly, well, that's the right thing to do. Sabri has just used another human power tool called conscience. A conscience is an inner voice which teaches us right from wrong. Each of us has a conscience, and it will either grow or shrink depending upon whether or not we follow its cues. Sabri's walk with Apollo comes to an end. As she opens the front door, she hears her mom yell from the other room.
Sabri, is that you? Sabri, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Where have you been?
Sabri has already decided to not lose her cool with her mom. So despite wanting to yell back, "Get out of my face," she responds calmly.
I just want to walk with Apollo. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I love you.
I love you.
While Sabri is using her fourth human tool, willpower, it'll control her anger. Apollo, who has been told not to chase rabbits, on the other hand, is overcome by his instincts. Willpower is the power to act, the power to choose, to control our emotions, and to overcome our habits and instincts. As you can see, we either use or fail to use our 4 superhuman power tools every day of our lives. Those 4 superhuman power tools are self-awareness, imaginations, conscience, and willpower. The more we use these power tools, the stronger they become, and the more power we have to be proactive. However, if we fail to use them, we tend to react by instinct like a dog and not act by choice like a human.
You may not realize it, but you begin with the end in mind all the time. You drop a blueprint before you build a house, and you read a recipe before you bake a cake. You create an outline before you write a paper. It's just part of life. Okay, now, here's a little experiment. Close your eyes and be very quiet. It's time to use our imaginations, one of our superhuman power tools. Clear your mind of everything. Keep your eyes closed. Don't think of texting your friend or looking at your phone. Breathe deeply and open your mind wide. In your mind's eye, visualize someone walking towards you about half a block away. At first, you can't see who it is. As this person gets closer and closer, you suddenly realize, believe it or not, it's you. But it's not you today. It's you as you'd like to be 1 year from now. Okay, now think deeply. What have you done with your life over this past year? How do you feel inside? What do you look like? Has your personality grown? Remember, this is you as you would like to be 1 year from now. Stay quiet. Really think about the answers to these questions. If you actually tried this experiment, you probably got in touch with your deeper self. You got a feel for what's important to you and what you'd like to accomplish this next year. That's what beginning with the end in mind is all about. Why is it so important to have an end in mind? As a young adult, you're at a critical crossroads in life, and the paths you choose now can affect you forever. If you don't decide your own future, someone else will do it for you. The crossroads of life. You have your whole life before you. You're standing at a crossroads of life, and you have to choose which paths to take. Do you want to go to college? Graduate from school? Do you want to travel, learn another language? Should you try out for a team or a musical? What type of friends do you want to have? Will you cut class again? Do you want to date? What kind of a person? Would you like to get married? Will you have sex before marriage? Will you drink or smoke or do drugs? What values will you choose? What kind of a relationship do you want with your family? What will your attitude toward life be? And what will you stand for, like from Hamilton, the musical? How will you contribute to your community, your family, and the world?
My brother Bruce Amberson has made a very successful life for himself and has also helped millions of people across the planet with a heater system he invented and patented. So Bruce, welcome to our channel. I knew you had a personal experience with Stephen Covey and wanted to hear your story about meeting him. I also hope to hear about what you've learned about making a personal mission statement. So, Bruce, did you ever read his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
The answer is yes, and I actually have a story about it because when I was about 19, I had been working in resorts, high-end resorts, and quite often there were celebrities and professional athletes and movie stars and music groups, popular music groups that would come and stay at the resort in Phoenix, Arizona. And I got used to being around these people superficially, for maybe a few minutes at a time. Sometimes for hours I would be with famous people in various walks of life. But one time a company called Baxter Medical came to stay at our hotel, and they actually took every room in the whole resort. They flew in all their muckety mucks, and the money they were spending was unbelievable. And they did fireworks that were bigger than most municipal fireworks. Well, anyway, at the very end of it, towards the end of them being at the hotel, they brought in this big shot to speak for Baxter Medical. And I just happened to be working the night that he arrived. He was going to speak the next day, and I took him to his room. And it was a very large property. We would drive people around on basically golf carts to get them to their room, and got to start talking to him and found out that his son played football at BYU and that he had been brought in by Baxter Medical to speak to them. And I started asking him more questions about, again, this was in 1989, and I started asking him questions about, well, what is it that he taught? He said he worked with companies on how to develop leadership and how to develop good skills and so forth. Well, anyways, it turned out to be Stephen Covey, and I was 19 years old. I was very inquisitive. I've always been inquisitive, and I was asking him lots of questions, and we happened to both be LDS, and I was preparing to go on a mission. And he had served a mission, his sons had served missions. And so I think he took a little extra time. We probably spent 15 or 20 minutes in his room after we got to his room talking and him answering my questions and so forth. And I left and never thought of it ever, again. And after that, and then literally just a few months later, I started an LDS mission, and I went to, this would have been probably mid to late November of 1989. And people would come speak to everybody in the MTC. And there was about 2,500 missionaries in the MTC at the time, which is the Missionary Training Center. And I was there learning a language that I was going to speak during my mission. And we would have apostles from the LDS Church come. We would have, all kinds of very important people come and speak. And then all of a sudden, one time, this guy comes on the stage to speak to us. His name is Stephen Covey. And then that was the moment I realized it was the same person who I had met before at the hotel. And I listened to his speech carefully. And it had more impact on me than any other speech while I was in the MTC. He didn't preach a sermon out of the scriptures. He actually was teaching from a book that he had written, which had just barely been published, called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. During his speech, he gave us a handout. It was a single piece of paper that was double-sided. And I went back to my room and I started reading that, and I read it over and over again, and eventually I kind of wore mine out. I actually took my companions, because both my companions, I had 2 companions at the time, and one of them said, "That's just common sense," and the other one just said, "Oh, it's boring." But I actually wore mine out, so I borrowed one of theirs that was still fresh, and I went and actually had it laminated, and I read it once a week for my whole mission. And but that first week when I got it and was reading it, I actually got pretty gloomy, because I knew that the principles, the 7 habits, or the principles behind the 7 habits were right on, that they were solid. But I also had to reconcile with the fact that I was not many of the things described in his 7 habits. And so I was a little bit depressed for a few days. In particular, he talks about being motivated by the wrong things, like we have the wrong motives. And I think that was the thing that probably troubled me the most. Now, one quote I'd like to read off right now is a quote that Stephen Covey loves and actually quotes quite often himself, and it's from Viktor Frankl. And it's that he says, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response relies our growth and freedom."
Your childhood and teenage years were difficult, and your first marriage also. How did you navigate these hardships, yet still build such a successful life for yourself?
I have to say, almost every hardship that I've had in my life, I've had a very privileged, blessed life, really. And virtually every hardship that I've had has been self-inflicted. Viktor Frankl talks about how things happen to us, we have feelings, but those feelings don't mean anything until we assign meaning to those feelings. And we should be assigning meaning to those feelings based off of our values. And that's why, Stephen Covey talks about having a value subordinate an impulse. And that's what I was doing wrong, especially in the younger part of my life. And it caused me lots of hardship and lots of sadness in my life, lots of struggles. I'll give you an example between philosophical and pragmatic. Say you have to go, you're forced, you have to fight somebody physically. You have to go, say, into a boxing ring, you have to fight somebody. And you have 2 coaches, and one coach is like Yoda, and he says, "Do or do not. There is no try." Well, now, how helpful is that actually for you to go into that fight? How helpful is that really? It's very philosophical. It feels good. It sounds really good. But how applicable is it? And then on the other coach you have is an actual boxing coach. And the boxing coach tells you, remember, keep your elbows pointing towards the ground. Now, the reason why boxing coaches will tell you that is because if you keep your elbows pointed to the ground, because optically, they've learned now through studies of the brain that when the elbows are pointed to the ground and when you punch, it's much harder for your brain to respond than if you come around like this. When you come around, it's called telegraphing, and there's much more time to move or to duck or to block or something like that. Whereas if you keep your elbows down and you punch quickly, you're far more likely to land a blow. So now, which one of those 2 pieces of advice for my 2 coaches are really going to help? I would definitely go with the coach who's telling me to keep my elbows pointing at the ground. And why is that? It's not philosophical. This is something that has been learned through trial and error. This is a success principle born out of empirical evidence of success over and over again. And so that's the example I would give, is that a lot of my decisions made in my early life were ideological or philosophical rather than actually pragmatic, based on things that actually work in the real world, in reality.
You have accomplished so much good and helped millions with your inventions, and in many third world countries. What goals did you incorporate to produce such a positive outcome?
How did I build a happy and successful life? Because I am very happy, and I think that I put down a few things here that I think are what I am the most proud of in my life. And they're probably not going to be necessarily what most people might say, but one of the things I'm really proud of is that I chose where I live. Most people that I've observed, just anecdotally, have not chosen where they live. They live where they live because maybe that's where their work took them or kept them. They live where they live because they're afraid to move away from family. And, I'm not criticizing any of those things. But for me, and for my life, one of the best things I ever did is that I was living in a big city with lots of asphalt and concrete and strip malls, and I knew that that was part of why I just felt like my soul was dying, because I grew up with a lot of nature, and I really missed it. And in particular, I wanted a mountain lifestyle. I'd had small times where I would go out and experience mountain lifestyle, but I didn't live anywhere near that. And so I did research, and I actually moved to a place where I had no friends or family. My work at the time, I was working remote, but had I lost the job, it would have been very difficult for me to maybe have found another job at the time. And it took some courage, to be honest, to move me and my whole family, my wife and 3 kids, to a totally new place. But it has made all the difference in my daily happiness. I live in a place where I can literally smell fresh air being brought in by a mountain river of conifers, pine tree smell and firs and so forth, being brought in on a mountain river right into my backyard, and it makes a huge difference for me. Another decision that I made that I think I'm really proud of is that I got divorced. Now, I know that might sound a little bit odd, but I mentioned that I made decisions based on all the wrong things, based on philosophy, ideology, based on feelings. And of course, when you're getting married, feelings are a very important component, but by far not the most important. Another thing that I was able to accomplish was because my background is software engineering, but I got involved with a company, and eventually I actually studied a lot about heating and about the inefficiencies of the way we heat buildings and spaces. And over time, I developed a heat exchanger. It's called the floating heat exchanger it's gone into millions of heaters that have been sold all over the world. I think more in China than there has been in Europe and in the Americas. But the reason why that I'm very proud of that isn't because of the number of heaters, except that that represents the number of people that it's helped to stay warm. I found that I really enjoy creating something like a product that helps people to stay warm. I'm not sure why. It was something that you end up discovering about yourself that you didn't know. But people who are warm are far more happy and more productive. If you're cold and you're in your home and you're wrapped up in blankets and you still feel cold, it's very hard to be productive, and it's hard to be happy. And so it makes me happy to think that maybe that product has helped people around the world stay warm. Probably the other thing that I'm really proud of is that I was able to get married a second time. And, they say that that 50% of first marriages end in divorce, and 75%, I think it is, in second marriage, or 68% or something like that, and then third marriage is 75%. Well, I'm really happy that I really felt like I learned my lesson from my first marriage, and I'm in my second marriage for years now, and I can say that I didn't make that decision, as a non-proactive person. I didn't make that decision driven by feelings and or circumstances or conditions or my environment. I chose my wife based on what I believe are success principles, and the success principles mean that we're compatible rather than sharing ideological similarities. We actually are naturally compatible. When a problem arises, we tend to respond naturally in the same.
Bruce, have you ever made a personal mission statement?
Yes, I have. I was, by 1990, I was full on into the Stephen Covey system, and this, means that you create daily tasks to achieve goals, and that you achieve those goals to develop values. And that was kind of the system that Stephen Covey had developed, and I was just all about it all through my 20s. And I have modified that personal mission statement many times over the years. Although now today, I actually call it clarity of purpose rather than a mission statement. And periodically, my wife and I review it.
What advice would you give to our listeners about writing a personal mission statement?
I would say that probably the most important thing is to make sure that you cover all the categories. And there's plenty of people out there who can teach better about this than me. And I'm sure that there are as many different types of personal statements as there are, or personal missions as there are people. But for me, I can go quickly through the categories that I found important to me, which was spirituality, health, relationships, wealth, and fun. And you're going to hear a lot from other people about those other categories, but I really want to focus on fun, because I don't think, especially people as they get into middle age, I think fun is just like something that people don't get to do very often, and I don't know why that is necessarily, but my wife and I are very intentional about having fun. We try to go out and have an adventure of some kind, usually in the mountains, once a week. We try to go on vacations. We try to do things that we really enjoy, and we devote money to it. We devote time. We plan for it. It's part of my clarity of purpose document, and I have it bullet pointed, and I have it set up. Now, the one thing I will say is that for me personally, my own clarity of purpose document is not in a paragraph format. It's not an affirmation statement or something like that. It's literally broken into categories. It's a bullet point list, and it's very specific and terse. And I want it to be something that when I review it, it's very clear in that how I'm going to hold myself responsible as to whether I am accomplishing the items in that document.
Determined. This is the playlist category for this episode. And here's our call to action. First, enter at least 3 songs into your determined playlist. Second, make time to be by yourself in a park or someplace quiet for at least 1 hour. It may take longer, or possibly a second or third attempt. Third, play through your songs as you create your own personal mission statement. Inventing your mission statement will bring happiness into your life as you see the person you hope to become in a year or 2. It's like the blueprint to your life. Most companies, like Southwest, Apple, Coke, or Facebook, have mottos, but a personal mission statement is everything that you want to become and accomplish in this life. Remember, a mission statement is only a wish until it is written down. To help you build your mission statement, think of a person who made a positive difference in your life. What qualities does that person have that you would like to develop? Or Imagine 20 years from now, you are surrounded by the most important people in your life. Who and where are they, and what are you doing? Here's another method. Think of a steel beam 6 inches wide, placed across 2 towering skyscrapers. For what would you be willing to cross? $1,000, $1 million, your pet, your brothers, fame? Think carefully. Or describe a time when you were deeply inspired. Try this helpful method. List 10 things you love to do. It could seriously be anything. Or refer to your 5 top strengths from your Strengths Finder assessment. Use these strengths to help you build your mission statement. If you could spend one day in a great library studying anything you wanted, what would it be? Here's another question. 5 years from now, a major news site is going to do a feature piece on you, and they want to interview 3 people you're close to. Who are they, and what would you want them to say about you? Or, if you could spend an hour with any person who ever lived, who would that be? Why that person? And what would you ask them? Okay, now you're ready to write your personal mission statement. It may take several tries, but just start writing. There's no right or wrong. The most important question to ask yourself is, does it inspire me? If you can answer yes, you did it right. Congratulations. Subscribe to Problem Solved, fellow humans. Together we can change our world for good. Be happy and prosper.